Hi, everybody. I'm Rob Koplowitz. I'm here with Ryan Duguid today. How are you, Ryan?
Doing fantastic. It's been a busy day recording podcast sessions and digging into the true origins of low code. So it's great to discuss a fantastic topic like we have coming up.
Yeah. So let's jump right in. So, folks, we have some new research that's going to be published. That is published. It's out there on analysis.tech, and Ryan and I played a principal role in developing that research. And so we wanted to just walk you through it today. So maybe we'll just start with the title here, Ryan. AI, it's not going to kill low code, or is it? What do we think? Is AI going to kill low? Are we just going to talk on our apps and they're all going to get built and we won't have to do anything else?
It's a clickbait, right? Like I feel like we need a YouTube show where one of us has like a concerned face or something like that, and we try to get people to jump in because I've seen a bunch of people claiming low code's dead, and I think I don't know. I'll go out there on a limb and say I'm not sure they really understand what low code has been all about for the last couple of decades.
Did you say lemon sandwich?
Lemon sandwich.
All right, we'll jump into that as well. So folks, I think this felt like it was kind of obvious to the folks over here at Analysis.tech, but the more we kind of tested out the market, the more we realized it's not obvious, that there is still a lot of static going on out there, and there's some pretty big voices emerging in AI that maybe just are not super well versed in the area of developing applications. So maybe I'm going to go through this, from one side here, Ryan, on kind of the traditional development side, and maybe you can bring us through quickly on the low code side, and then we'll talk about this box at the bottom that's emerging services. But kind of talk about what we're doing here. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is work towards this box in the middle, this application. This is where business optimization happens. This is where automation happens. There's a few different ways to get there, and there's absolutely no doubt that in the world of traditional code, coders, trained coders like Ryan, not myself, in the world of traditional coding, there is a sea change taking place. You can develop applications much more efficiently. I wouldn't necessarily say that there's been a great deal of effectiveness that has been brought to bear here, but when you look at copilots, the ability to develop faster, the ability to get through low value work very, very quickly, and the ability to focus on the higher value work is definitely emerging, and it's emerging in a very real way. And it does open up potentially some areas for some amount of business participation, but not really in the way that we're thinking about with low code. But ultimately, it shows up in code, right? So if you're working with a great Copilot product, it's going to output code, and you better speak code to get from there down to the application level. Still different than low code. Tell us about low code, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing with low code is it's about who's getting involved and who's coming in with domain expertise to help build a solution to a problem in the business. And it's interesting because we'll get to the box on application, right? But at the end of the day, people tend not to wake up one morning and say, you know what, Rob, like we need an application around here, right? Is there anyone here who can build applications? If people turn up and say, we've got a problem in the business. Things aren't working the way we want them to work. Things we think could be more effective. We think we could be more competitive, move faster, whatever it happens to be, right? Can someone solve that for us? Okay, so in today's world, we think of that as an application. Some set of tools and technologies build something for you. And what low code has been wildly successful at is enabling a set of people who are really close to those business problems that are being described, to come up with a solution to the problems without having to go to IT, go to developers to build something. Because IT and developers are busy folks. They've got a big backlog trying to get through thousands and thousands of requests from the business, and you're probably somewhere below their cut line. So this is a way to bring people in to be able to solve for that. Now, not everybody, and that's something we can get into discussing when we think about where AI plays in low code, but a percentage of your user population beyond just developers who can help build solutions to business problems.
So Ryan, let me throw in maybe one more thought here, which is sometimes it is IT developing in low code, right? We've
Yep.
seen that model a lot, but what they're bringing back to the business is something that the business can actually iterate upon. They can react to. It's visual in nature. It's not code. I mean, I think
Correct.
Nick Ford, I think, said it really well in his podcast. Nick Ford with Mendex said, users speak visual. They don't speak code. You want to involve them. And to your point, we really want to involve them. This metaphor, this visual metaphor is still really important. So we end up with this application, and then there's this other thing that's going on right now, which is there is a massive amount of emerging AI services, right? So, ChatGPT, creating content, generative AI, generated visuals and graphics and things like that are dominating kind of our feeds right now. But this has been going on for a really long time in the area of software development, where these AI services have been really valuable and can be, ingested to make processes more, far more effective. What are your thoughts on some of that? I mean, we've been at it for a while. We can sort of name some of those off, but what's coming down the line that's going to help all these applications get better?
Well, I think it's the blessing and the curse, right? So with the emergence of large language models and ChatGPT and OpenAI at the forefront of it, I mean, it's become a thing now, right? Average people are talking about GPT, and I don't think they even know what it stands for, because most of the time they said GTP, right?
Right.
And so the good part of it is it's drawn a lot of attention to what's possible and where all this technology is going, and it's bringing in a lot of research and a lot of investment dollars. So usually during these phases in tech cycles, we'll see a big shift forward. At the same time, I think it sort of ignores the fact we've been at this for a long time, right? Like artificial intelligence has been around, since the last century. And a lot of the time it's become so commonplace that you don't even talk about it as artificial intelligence anymore, right? So I think everyone would pretty much think it's a standard thing, and it's certainly in the world of low code. Oh, someone emailed me an invoice. I'd like to process the invoice, extract the information from it, put it in a database and kick off some process, right? That's artificial intelligence, but we'll talk about that as vision or OCR or the likes, and it becomes commonplace. And I think that's, as you start to see it become more normalized in terms of how we talk about it, that's when things are really coming on mainstream. And so how, we think about these AI services, especially in the world of process automation, is around finding the tweaks and the tunes in efficiency and effectiveness, where we can say, hey, is there a way to either remove the need for human activity, human decision making, or is there a way to, in the sense of co-piloting things, a way to provide a person with much greater insights to help them make better decisions, to help them get things done faster, and so how can the AI services help with that? And I think that's what we're going to start to see more and more of here. And then the goal becomes, how can I most easily consume those services into my application?
And trade them in and out, right? So Rob and Ryan go off tomorrow, and we build an application with an iPhone or any phone with a camera, and you take a picture of an accident. You've been in a car accident, you take a picture of the damage, and wow, this thing is 80% accurate at actually being able to assess the damage as well as the underlying damage. How much would an insurance company like to pull that into their insurance claims process, make it faster, have the adjuster not have to go out and make that trip? I want that service right now, right? I want to be able to consume it into the application. And one of the beauties of a lot of these low-code applications, particularly the ones that are digitally process automation focused, have a process component, is it's actually pretty straightforward to consume these things in as they emerge. We've been doing it for a long time, to your point. So there is a lot of change happening. It's happening in the traditional world. It's happening in the low-code world. It's happening around these services for both. But all of it continues to accrue value to the low-code thing. So we've got a little smattering of things here, guys, and folks, and things that people are working on. We're seeing pretty cool stuff happening with with process models being provisioned through large language models, forms, mobile UI interfaces being deployed, data models being deployed, user roles. Some work around data integration being made easier, faster, these types of services integrations that we're talking about, being able to consume heterogeneous technologies into a model, certainly multilingual support. This is not meant to be a comprehensive list. This is just a sample of some of the things we see that help you, I think, get a jump start on building an application. None of these things provision a finished application, but they're sort of like Uber templates where you can, build much more things, much more robust, and use them as kind of a starting point. So when we move from this kind of smattering of examples that we've given here into like a more comprehensive model, what are we thinking in terms of where this will go, Ryan, and how do we get our arms around it?
Yeah, it's, the interesting thing is right now what we're seeing in the low code space, and every vendor is, plus or minus some months probably of innovation from one another with this. I'd like an app that insert requirements here, right? And then something emerges from that discussion with a chatbot, and that can be anything from a simple form through to super robust data schema, through to a set of dashboards and KPIs and sample data all ready to start tweaking and tuning. But the challenge with it, and it gets back to your point, Rob, about the visual metaphor, is it's sort of, I see two problems. One is that we used to make people write requirements and they really struggled with it. And we had these massive requirements documents that sat on shelves and never actually got implemented true to spec. All right. So we said, hey, let's use this visual metaphor. And everyone really embraced that because I can feel it, I can touch it. There's no surprise why Figma is so successful as a company, right? Because it really enables more people to build out what they think their user experience should look and feel like. And so we get to that place. So I think there's one tension here, which is how far should we go with the prompt dialogue versus something a little bit more back and forward, I think, in terms of an interaction. And then the other side of it is that once we're done, we kind of throw people back into the complexity of configuring that visual environment, right? So if you look at the sort of, I guess, the downside of low-code tools is we made the visual experience so sophisticated that sometimes people get lost in that. So we said, hey, you don't need code anymore. Just go into these 50 screens and configure these property panels that have 50 properties per panel. 50 times 50 is a lot of complexity, right? So I think we have to start to evolve beyond that. That's one part of this. And the other part of it is we have to think about how we help with that iterative approach, right? And this is where right now, even if you're familiar with using something like ChatGPT for content creation, it's not perfect at incremental changes. So you get a first cut and you say, I don't like it. Could you just make this tweak? And then it redoes the whole thing. And you sort of almost need this way to mask it. Like imagine you said, hey, write a press release for me, GPT. And you almost want this way to say, I like paragraphs 1 and 3. Don't touch them at all. Let's go to paragraph 2 and make a small tweak. Okay, now I'm feeling good about it. And so we need this way to help people go back and forth and have this dialogue to get to where they want to. And then jumping in and out of that visual drag and drop metaphor along the way. But this set of elements, to your point, this is, I think, where we start to see people lining up their investments and trying to drive their differentiations from a vendor perspective in terms of where their sweet spot or strong set was before they came into the AI world.
So Ryan, this is what I think we need to do, right? I think you and I in Analysis.tech need to actually go out to the market and work with the vendors in this space. We have relationships with most of them, and really start to build out a comprehensive list of where the market stands today in terms of AI driven elements, and really get a good look at their roadmap and where they're going next. So so folks, that is actually the follow-on piece of research, which will be a little bit or actually quite a bit more robust than this. As I said, we really thought this was important to get out there because people seem to be confused. This seemed obvious to us. But in terms of where the market is going, where the vendors are making their investments, where we have actual real capabilities available, building out a single place where you can go and look at all the vendors in the space and what they've built and what they plan to build. That is the next piece of research that we intend to tackle here. So just one more thing. So Ryan, I've got this fantasy world that I've been looking at for a bunch of years where, you say, I want to do a process. I want to do an onboarding process for a customer in XYZ industry who's going to be ABC type of a customer. And there's a large language model out there and it says, this is what your process should look like. And I go and I say, well, that's pretty good, but I want to tweak that process. I'd love it to be able to be maybe perhaps aligned with what my internal processes actually are. There's a lot of investment in things like process mining. I want to be able to then look at that visual application that's been provisioned and be able to, with the business, validate that application, iterate on that application, deploy it into production, and have all of these become areas of continuous improvement. So am I smoking the curtains?
Well, I think this is what gets really interesting, Rob. So, I mean, that's always been the holy grail, right? It's the continuous improvement. Now, super relevant to some set of processes in an organization, right? If you think about something like your insurance claim situation, we want to be able to process more of those claims faster, get the money in the hands of the people who need it to get on with their lives in a much quicker pace, right? And so you're always, as the owner of that process, looking for how can we improve it? And then there are some processes, I remember, won't name names, but an analyst friend from Gartner one time talking about nuisance processes. And those nuisance processes, you just kind of want them to go away, right? And it's like, hey, and no one comes back and says, can we tweak and can we tune that, right? So part of it is figuring those things out, right? But this world of continuous improvement, I think, is super interesting. And it starts to speak to, I think, how these AI investments line up, right? So if you look at the previous slide, we talk about kind of classic components of an application, the UI tier, the database tier, the process tier, the business rules, this sort of stuff. There's another approach where we look at this problem space around the software development lifecycle, and we say, hey, what are all the phases from requirements gathering through to some ideation and visual designs and so on and so forth through to deployment and ultimate sunset of an application. And then there's a role-based approach to it. So if I'm an end user versus a person who builds the thing versus an admin, so on and so forth, right? And so in this world, I think when we look at this continuous cycle, what gets super interesting is, where does AI play a role in this cycle? So where does AI pop up? And I know you've got a sweet spot for sort of the process mining, process intelligence, right? So where does AI pop up in this once the application's built and it's actively monitoring it, and it's starting to tell you about the usage characteristics and the trends and the KPIs? And so I have this holy grail, this sort of vision in my mind of this goal-seeking, results-oriented bot that sits in the background looking at your hundreds of thousands of apps in your business and saying, hey, a small investment over here could yield big results. Another investment over here could do this. Hey, people seem to be getting stuck and confused here. Maybe we could make a change to the application or a change to the process, or nothing ever goes down this path. Let's trim that path off of that workflow, right? Those are the things that I think get super fascinating, because in today's world, if you look at what, just sort of this ideal outcome that we're after of continuous improvement, the reality is it's kind of contingent on people coming back around and wanting to reinvest. And sometimes, sometimes these initiatives don't work. And few people want to go, let's highlight the results of the failed process improvement effort. So right. I think if we can take that out of the hands of individuals or business process owners and have something that's monitoring and making suggestions, then that gets super interesting.
So what's really interesting to me about that one, Ryan, is we started this thing by saying there's a bunch of pundits out there that saying, AI will kill low code. No, I don't think so. I think if you actually just sit down and kind of walk through it methodically, you realize that's not the case. But what you're describing is actually based on building blocks that are either exist today or just are not very far off. So, so this is where things get actually really interesting. So folks, thanks for taking the time today. Hopefully this was helpful. Obviously, reading the research would be a lot more helpful. Please go to analysis.tech, and you'll be able to download the report there. And please, for the folks who are out there building these applications, Ryan and I will be in touch, because there is a next phase of this research that'll be coming down the line where we're going to need your help. Thank you, Ryan.
No problem.